We feel personal hope whoever's out there listening appreciate trying to transition into this visual thing, you know, see if I can get my views up on YouTube. Like I said, I'm gonna keep saying my goal hasn't always been like I don't know why other people podcast, but I know I just have a lot of things to say and have opinions on things. I'm just trying to put it out there, see who agrees, who doesn't agree, trying to, you know, just put my thoughts into the world. Um, as always, I just thank everyone who's taking the time out of their day to give me a little bit of that time and enjoy the time that I'm taking out of my day to share with you all. So, I want to give a special thank you to Sky Zoo. Um, I mentioned it in my very first unofficial episode that he inspired this in many ways. The name comes from a song that he made. So I reached out to him in the whole process of this, just trying to see what the process would be to try to use his song as my theme song, but also just to get his permission to use the name Civilized Leisure. And he reached back out. Dude is so humble. That's one of the things I like about him. He's so humble and just human and approachable. And he gave me his blessing. And he just said, make sure he gets the credit. And every chance I get, I'll make sure he gets that credit. So, in all future episodes, you'll probably be hearing that song in the opening. And I thank you again, Skyzoo, for giving me your blessing to use the word, the phrase, and the song. Yeah. So, been a lot going on this week. I was having a conversation with my wife about how art really does often imitate life. And I saw it happen this past weekend when it came to the college football playoff, right? And there's this big hoopla over these teams that didn't make it in, Notre Dame and a couple of other teams, and they were given invites to secondary bowls that don't even matter in the big scheme of things because they're not attached to the playoffs, and they declined. And then there's a big stink because Alabama made it in. Alabama had 3 losses. That third loss coming in the championship game, the SEC championship game, to Georgia, and there was some controversy over how they made it in, and how a team like Notre Dame didn't make it in. But at the same time, I also noticed that 2 small schools, James Madison University and Tulane, made it in to the college football playoffs, and it got me to thinking. The whole reason for the college football playoffs was, you know, for years the NCAA had pretty much been ran by the power conferences. So every year you would pretty much see the same teams getting the same rankings and getting the same, bowl bids and fighting for the same national championship. And if you weren't in one of those power conferences, you pretty much shit out of luck, right? So they created a system that created the playoff format that we now know. And it was based on some criteria. I'm not sure how much strength the schedule plays into it, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't watch college football like that anymore. But there's some rules and things that make sure that certain teams that normally wouldn't get the look or get the opportunity get that opportunity. Pretty much leveling the playing field and making it fair for everyone involved, right? So because of that system, that's how you have 2 colleges like James Madison University and Tulane University in the college football playoffs when they're not big schools as opposed to Southern Cal or Oklahoma or Georgia or Miami or a Notre Dame, right? But somehow Alabama, who has always been at the top, the system, the powers that be, the governing body, figured out a way to make sure they were included, even though they necessarily did deserve, right? So it got me to think. As I said, art imitates life. So college football, in in this instance of this year's playoff bracket, showed us one, how DEI is supposed to work. Because James Madison University and Tulane, who are colleges who compete, who do all the things all of the other big schools do, got in based on their merit, their hard work, their record. But somehow the powers that be still found a way to let a mediocre Alabama University of Alabama, however you say it, a mediocre school, still be in the playoffs just based on who they were and who they've always been. Art imitates life. Art imitates life. In that instance, again, we saw how DI is supposed to work and how the system will always find a way to move the goalposts, pun intended, for the mediocrity of a powerhouse. Yeah, that's crazy, right? So that was just one thought I had today, and it was amazing how that unfolded in my head because just sitting there watching it, it was like Alabama, and it's funny that it's Alabama too, given the history of Alabama. So it's just something to think about, and I need people to get to a place where we understand, like you gotta look past all of the pseudo intellectualism that's been surrounding the term DEI, the stochastic terrorism, which is pretty much, in layman's terms, passive aggressive attacks on something that dehumanizes it or demonizes it to the people. And when people attack it, the people who inflicted that stochastic terrorism has plausible deniability. Like, I didn't do it. I didn't say anything. What did I say? What did I do? You know, I just made a post about that today in regards to the Black Lives Matter Plaza in DC and how they were changing the name to I don't know, it was something in regards to Charlie Kirk, and they tagged on freedom of speech to that, which is crazy to me. Given when he was unalived, anybody who had anything to say other than his praises and mourning for him was attacked. People lost jobs. People were, you know, but that whole freedom of speech thing is a whole different conversation because that's also us not understanding the letter of the law and how it was written in the Constitution. Because, you'll always hear people say freedom of speech is not freedom of consequence, and that is indeed the truth. And it's the irony in that situation because, as we all know, Charlie Kirk's unaliving was, for lack of a better word, his consequences for his freedom of speech and the things he was saying and the words and the stochastic terrorism that he himself was participating in. But from my understanding of the First Amendment, that kind of only protects you from your government, which a lot of the Constitution is, as I understand it. Don't don't come for me if I'm a little wrong on this. Just correct me and I'll make the proper correction. But Most of it was written as a way for us not to be, you know, attacked by our government. You know, that doesn't attack you. Excuse me. That doesn't protect you from what happens in the private sector. If your job has standards and guidelines in place, and something you say violates that, they're well within their legal rights to terminate you. But for me, it's the intentional targeting of people just because you don't like what they say, which is what was done, which is what Black Lives Matter was initially about, regardless of whether you support the organization itself. You know, the term was a free speech term for how we in the Black community, the Black diaspora, felt about the historical unaliving of us. And this is why you see that they go to the lengths that they go to erase or rewrite history. Because you go back as far as the Casual Killing Act. First of all, foremost, our existence on this land was because of chattel slavery, and with chattel slavery came the dehumanizing of us. We were seen as property. We weren't human. Plessy versus Ferguson pretty much said that there is no human right or civil right that a Black person has that a white person has to acknowledge. So I want you to think about that when it comes in terms to how they viewed us, how they built us up, how they tried to destroy us, the stereotypes that they placed on us, the ways that they performed that same stochastic terrorism on our humanity to get people to see us as less human. So when things happen to us, either we deserved it or they don't care that it's happening to us, or we're doing it to ourselves. And you see that same thing happening to every non-white diaspora on this land right now. Every Hispanic person, every brown face is an illegal immigrant here stealing the white man's opportunity. African. I'm pretty sure they're gonna find a way to come for Asians, but every non-white diaspora in this land has been a victim of stochastic terrorism. And the crazy thing about it is the people are so uneducated that what they don't realize is when there are no people of color for that terrorism to be aimed at, and then it becomes an internal class war. That's what the Gilded Age was about. That's what the strikes in Appalachia and the coal mines of West Virginia was about. That's what every labor struggle that led to things like the New Deal and the formation of unions was about. The term redneck came during those coal mining strikes, where they wore red scarves around their neck, so you know who they were and what they were fighting for. That was their N-word. That was them saying that. That was them owning who they were and taking a negative and spinning it into a positive. The same way we did with the word nigga, the same way we did with the word black. Yeah. So it always leads back to class consciousness and how we all need to develop class consciousness. I was talking about Fred Hampton last week and how much he inspired me, and that's all he was trying to get us to recognize. And he was doing such a great job of getting us to recognize that. That's why he became a threat. I don't think it was because he was a Black Panther or he was a strong Black man. That was part of it, because Hoover had this disdain for Black people that was unmatched because he had pretty much the unlimited power to act on that disdain for black people. But he said it. There would be no black Jesus unless they created one. Fred Hampton was, for all intents and purposes, black Jesus. For Jesus. However, a whole nother conversation. I ain't gonna do that. But he was breaking through the minds of those who were being divided by race and getting them to understand that it's not about race. Race is just a tool of a bigger system that is being used to keep us at each other's throat and not focused on our real enemy. I've said this before. Pretty much, they give you someone to punch down on, so you're not focused on them punching down on you. And what we really need to be doing is, this is why they demonize that class consciousness so much. Like, it's funny to how things that actually help people are demonized, and how easily people buy into that demonization, right? Like, for example, the idea of the government you pay taxes to taking said tax money and providing all of us with insurance that is paid for by all of us. Why does that bother you so much? The main reason it bothers you is because they presented it to you in a sense that you're paying for other people who can do for themselves when you're just trying to do for yourself. They made it about the individual and not the community. And we buy into that individuality as something that we should all be striving for. And we just throw big bag words on it like socialism and communism, which nobody really knows the definition of. Because if we did know the definition of it, we would understand that socialism that we're so afraid of and should be fighting exists within the people who are telling us that it's bad, and they call it subsidies, corporate subsidies. While you're angry that, or you're saying goody for those people on SNAP during the shutdown who didn't have SNAP benefits or weren't going to be able to eat or feed their families or themselves, while you were celebrating that and picking at the lazy people who could just do for themselves. The Walton family, Walmart, one of their subsidies, and they are the biggest recipient of it, is the tax break they get for the amount of employees they have on government assistance. So what that does is that incentivizes them to not take care of their employees, underpay them, so that, one, they have no way to take care of themselves, and two, underpay them in such a way where all of the money that they're getting that isn't going to taking care of their basic needs outside of work are being given right back to Walmart to take care of their basic needs that they can get out of there. The food, the clothing. It's no different, again, than what was going on in the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, I'm sorry. When companies had land that they owned that had housing on it, and they had a company store. And those people weren't paid in cash. They were paid in promissory notes or vouchers that they would then take back to that country store and get everything they needed. So they had no money for themselves. They couldn't build wealth. These are the things they're not trying to teach you. These are the things they're not going to teach you. And we've also been foolishly led to believe that we can trust what they're teaching us and that they're going to teach us everything we need to know. But that's that socialism that they teach you to be scared of. It's scary unless they're getting it. It's wrong for you to get it, but it's okay for them to get it. But again, the individual says, why am I giving up my hard-earned tax money to pay for insurance for somebody else? You do realize you're not the only one that pays taxes. We all pay taxes. And if we're being perfectly honest with you, we all pay more than we should. And it's about to go up. New budget. Big, beautiful bill. But anyway, you're not the only one that pays taxes. Please explain to me how it's wrong for your tax dollars to go to something that benefits you. How do you let someone lead you to believe that something that benefits you is wrong in the most vile way? Meanwhile, since World War II, the land that we call Israel has received over $100 billion. $100 billion and counting. Our Pentagon has failed, what, 9 straight audits? Where's that money going? Y'all so busy listening to people who you'll never be tell you that things that only benefit them is what's best for you. Yeah, stupid that sounds. And those of us who recognize that and are taking the Fred Hampton route, trying to get you to recognize that and that we're fighting for you against those people who you think are fighting for you, but they aren't. You demonize us because they tell you to. When we give you the facts, when we tell you the truth, it's like Warren Hill once said, truth is what? How did she say it? It was something along the lines of fantasy is what they want, but reality is what they need. I think that's what she said. Y'all are all in this state of la la. Delulu. And as a young man, I saw a video the other day. It popped up in my memories. I wish I could remember this man's name so I could give him the proper credit because it really resonated with me and speaks to what we're going through right now. He was telling a story about his grandfather's passing and how he went to the doctor and the doctor told him everything he needed to stay away from. And his grandfather died enjoying everything that doctor told him to stay away from. And he said in that moment, he came to the realization that his grandfather loved the thing that was killing him. He was speaking metaphorically about life in another sense, but that hit me in the sense that I'm speaking right now. When I look at how we allow the people that are hurting us to let us believe that they're doing what's best for us, and that us fighting for ourselves collectively is what's wrong, and we should be individually striving to be them. On a treadmill chasing a carrot that they're dangling, and not even paying attention to you as you're running. They're just looking the other way, doing other things, and just saying, yeah, you're almost there. You got it. You're almost there. You got it. You're almost there. You got to keep going. You're never going to get it. And it's a room full of treadmills. And those of us that realize we're on a treadmill and stop running or going around trying to get the rest of y'all to realize we're on a treadmill and we should stop running. But we get chastised, demonized, and villainized. You know, it'd be much easier for me to just go about my day and not care, but I'm just not built like that. I can let you stay on that treadmill and run till you die. But again, I don't want anything for anyone that I don't want for myself. So that's why I'm always come to this venue and get it out there and see if I can reach as many people as I can. Hey, real quick, I want y'all to pay some attention to something. That clock is dead on purpose because you should always know what time it is. You shouldn't need a clock to tell you what time it is. You should just sit there. Okay. So the other thing that I'm noticing, just in the news right now, it was something that hit me when I was reading it. You know, Jasmine Crockett just announced her run for Senate, which I think is important in the big scheme of things as it goes, as far as Texas and what's going on down there and how that impacts the rest of the country. But it's two things I noticed. I noticed that the overwhelming objection to this is coming from white liberals. And I noticed it is that same thing that was rising up during Kamala's presidency about her being pro-Israel. So again, two things can be true and we can have that conversation. And I think a lot of us, as smart as we are, we haven't figured out the strategy of politics and the chess game that's being played. But at the same time, on a human level, it is a fair criticism to bring that up. But I saw a post that made mention of something that gave me a different perspective on the whole situation. So Jasmine Crockett is from Texas. You know who else is also from Texas? James Tellerico. Now I'm not gonna lie, I've posted James Tellerico a couple of times because as a deconstructing Christian, the way he calls out Christian nationalism needs to be done. But what I am also noticing, and this post that I read made me pay attention to it even more, is that the way people immediately started attacking Jasmine Crockett for being pro-Israel and pro-genocide and a Zionist and all of that good stuff is visibly and loudly absent when it comes to James Tellerico, who has a Zionist on his staff, who receives that funding, that AIPAC funding, who takes those dollars, who has never called the genocide in Palestine or genocide in Palestine, who will loudly profess that Israel has a right to exist. He's not getting that same criticism. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. It reminds me of a little history for you. The reason William Henry Harrison, you gotta look him up, he was a white abolitionist, fell out with Frederick Douglass is because while they agreed on slavery needing to be abolished, Frederick would say things that he didn't agree with. He thought Frederick should fall in line and speak a certain way. He felt like if he was going to give him the platform, he had the right to tone police what he said, and Frederick wasn't going for it. So there's that aspect. See, James is a He's a middle-aged Christian white man who speaks eloquently and softly and says the harsh things in a way that's palatable for white ears to receive. Jasmine Crockett is a middle-aged black woman who speaks with the anger and frustration of black people. That's not lost on who and what she supports. I can have that conversation, but also acknowledge what I just said. And it speaks to what Malcolm X said, and I mentioned this before about white liberals and how they operate, how they're just as bad as white conservatives. They just do it in an underhanded way. Which, sidebar, is a lot of reason black people, black men specifically, use to bash the Democrats and bash the left while pushing white conservative ideology, which is weird to me. But again, it goes back to what I was speaking about earlier, about how we allow the people that are hurting us to tell us who's hurting us. It's just weird to me that you can see how they're hurting you. But because they've hurt you more in your mind, the people that have hurt you less, you're gonna speak like them and talk like them and parrot what they say about the people on the left. Yeah. But it also, the whole situation got me to also thinking about how the hypocrisy of it, right? So, like, white liberals love to call out conservative hypocrisy and ignore their own, the same way conservatives like to call out liberal hypocrisy and avoid their own. And I was thinking about that in terms of humanity, right? Not just politics, but it's things I noticed. It's things I noticed, like the fact that, take a guy like Dean Withers, for example, right? He spent the last year or so, I don't follow him, but he spent the last year or so, I guess he was a former conservative who somehow understood error of his ways and switched to the other side. So now he's built his platform challenging conservatives with the same energy he brought. He used as a conservative. And it came to a head, doubling back to the Kirkland alignment, to where his true colors kind of pretty much showed. Because he had a moment of lapse. And it was a human moment. I'll give him that. It was a human moment, right? It was a human moment. But in that human moment, he exposed who he really was. For me, at least. Because he pretty much was one of those people who would ignore how Kirk led to his own demise and just focus on the fact that his demise happened. And just made it plain and there that if it came down to it, he was going to choose him every time. That let me know everything I need to know about it, right? Then I also think of it in terms like, again, as a deconstructing Christian, one of the things I noticed once I started deconstructing my faith, I've gotten to a place where I accept everybody, who they are, where they are. That's what come as you are means to me. Who you are, wherever you are, what you believe. Even your belief is unbelief. That unbelief is your belief. And I'll acknowledge that. I'll honor that. But what I notice is people operate with the same zealous behavior and thought pattern as the Christians they hate so much and don't realize it. So I say that to say, for me, a change in mindset means nothing if there's no change in heart. Because it's pretty much the same shit in a different toilet. You're going to operate in your new space the same way you operated in your old space. You can't just break from the ideology. You have to break from the indoctrination too. You have to recognize that that's what it is. Because the same way I can say, I know atheists that are more Christian than Christians. I can also say, I know atheists that are more Christian than Christians. Okay, catch the wordplay, right? So when I say that, I know people who don't believe in God that behave more like Jesus than the people who believe in Jesus. But at the same time, I know people who don't believe in Christianity who operate with the same energy as Christians. That no hate like Christian love energy. They just direct it at everybody who believes in God. Or Christians specifically. Same shit, different toy. It is not enough to break from the ideology. You have to break the indoctrination. If you don't do that, you're just going to go to your new space with your old face. The goal is to be a brand new you, right? The goal is to not be like them. Don't get so wrapped up in exposing them that you become them. That doesn't just apply to religion. That applies to your politics. That applies to your race. That applies to your humanity. Do not hate your oppressors. Do not hate the people who have done you wrong more than you love yourself and your people. Yeah. So, ran a little long today. I just wanted to make sure I got this out because I had these thoughts on my mind. And I'm the kind of guy, I got so many thoughts going through my head that they come and they go, and it's hard to keep track of all of them. And I'm not the write it down type of person because when I write things down, it doesn't come off natural. You know, it doesn't flow the way I'd like it to. You know, that's why I don't do a script. I have points I want to hit, and I just come and I try to talk. And what that does is that allows me to do what I've been doing. Just come in and speak freely about these issues, segue into one after the other, but then connect them all. Because that's how my mind works. Like, it's crazy how my mind works sometimes, but I know I'm not the only one who thinks the way I think. But yeah, I could just find random things and connect them. Because it all connects at some point down the line. But yeah, that's about all I got for today, man. I just wanted to make sure I see y'all and y'all see me. So going forward, I'm gonna try this. I don't know what happened last week. I hit record, and by the time it uploaded, I saw I had no video. I had a whole prompt and everything ready to go. So hopefully it works this time, and y'all can see my face. And going forward, y'all gonna see my face. So I want to put a face with a name. Yeah, and I want y'all to see me in real time as I care for y'all. And we search for betterment of self, betterment of community. I am Brian C. White. This has been Civilized Leisure. I'll holler at y'all next week. Love y'all.